On this edition of ITG, it's been an eventful few days in the National Football League, and some of your favorite Mountaineers have found new homes. We'll get you up to speed with who has landed where and what their situation might look like on this episode of In the Gun.
You are now watching Believe.
Mountaineer Nation.
You are In the Gun.
Because once you enter this family, there's no getting out.
Welcome to it, folks. Jed Drenning here, flying solo for this quick episode. In case you haven't heard, Gino now has a bruiser to hand off to. Shedeur Sanders slid like nobody's business, and the Jags traded all over the board. But we're really only kind of sort of going to be talking about one of those three things on this episode. With the NFL draft in the rear view and many of the subsequent undrafted free agent deals now taking shape, we thought it'd be fun to give you a quick recap of what's played out in recent days and help update you on your scorecard in terms of which of your favorite Mountaineers have so far found a new home. This, of course, is an ongoing story, and we hope you hear a few more WVU-related names mentioned after we post this episode. But as we speak, this is the latest news we could find to give you. This is how things have gone so far to this point. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. Now, if former Spring Valley Timberwolf Wyatt Milum has ever wondered if he should have continued his baseball career as a big left-handed flamethrower instead of sticking it out on the gridiron, he can probably wonder a little bit less each day. The former four-year starter for West Virginia and just the 14th consensus All-American in Mountaineer history can now add something else to his resume: NFL draft pick. On Friday night, Wyatt Milum became the 199th West Virginia Mountaineer selected in the history of the NFL draft. After trading up to the number 2 overall spot in the first round to select Heisman Trophy winner Travis Hunter out of Colorado, Jacksonville had just selected cornerback Caleb Ransaw out of Tulane with the 88th overall pick in the third round. That's when they started working the phones again and traded from the 5th round back up to the 89th overall selection in the third round with a deal they made with the Houston Texans. With that 89th overall pick, they did in fact select Wyatt Milum. Now, this was the first draft for the Jaguars' key decision makers, the guys at the top. General Manager James Gladstone, actually the second youngest general manager in NFL history, head coach Liam Cohen, and Executive Vice President of Football Operations Tony Boselli, a name that football fans, of course, remember as a standout tackle out of Southern Cal. Former offensive lineman Boselli, of course, weighing in to draft another offensive lineman in Wyatt Milum. In this case, now you might wonder, what was it in Wyatt Milum that the Jaguars not just saw and liked, but truly trusted from an evaluation standpoint? There's sometimes some connective tissue involved in situations like this that gives a team the confidence to move forward and pull the trigger on a deal that would involve sacrificing so much draft capital to move up a couple rounds like the Jags did to get that 89th overall selection. Now, when you start studying the composition of this staff and look at their background, start with the head coach we mentioned, Liam Cohen. Liam Cohen last year was the O coordinator at Tampa, where he helped Baker Mayfield have a terrific season. Prior to that, he spent some time on Sean McVay's staff with the Rams. But if you dig way back into his past, you find out that Liam Cohen is a former college quarterback. He actually played at UMass, and his offensive coordinator with the Jaguars, a guy by the name of Sean Whipple, is a former college teammate of his who was also a quarterback who backed him up for 1 year at UMass. Sean Whipple bounced around and played multiple places in college, but one of those places was at UMass with Liam Cohen. Now, if the name Whipple sounds familiar, that's probably because Sean Whipple's dad is Mark Whipple, who's bounced around the NFL and spent a lot of time at the college coaching level. And one of the things he did that Mountaineer fans may or may not remember, maybe you heard about this in passing and didn't even realize it, Mark Whipple was the head coach at UMass that Neil Brown played for as a receiver his final couple seasons in college. So this is a situation here when you start looking at this and you're doing an eval on a player and you're wondering, hey, is this evaluation something that I can trust enough? I need to know what kind of kid this is, what he is outside the lines as well as inside the lines, what are his work habits, what's he do off the field. Well, think about the situation in Jacksonville. That Jacksonville staff, including the OC Sean Whipple, all he had to do was pick up the phone and call his dad, Mark Whipple, who regularly is in communication with Neil Brown. And you talk about getting the inside true scoop on what kind of kid and what kind of player Wyatt Milum is. There's no chance left on the table. There's really, you talk about minimizing your risk. That is how you minimize your risk. And oftentimes, when you see these types of situations and a team willing to nudge things up and move up a couple rounds to make a pick, well, there's always a gamble involved, but it helps when you understand or know somebody or have a relationship with somebody who can give you the true background on the type of player that you're making that kind of risk for. In this case, Wyatt Milum was a kid they traded from the 5th round all the way back up into the 3rd round to grab at 89 when he became available. That says a couple things. First of all, Wyatt Milum was a guy who they liked what they saw from an eval standpoint. They liked his tape. He was on their board. He was an active part of their conversations. But also, they understood what he was all about from a habit standpoint, from a working standpoint, from an outside the line standpoint, what kind of human being he is, what kind of student he is, what kind of teammate he is. And they got all that inside baseball, most likely from Neil Brown talking to Mark Whipple and or Sean Whipple. So that perfectly makes sense when you look at what the Jaguars did to jump up and take a guy like Wyatt Milum, who they see quite a future with. And when you look at what the Jaguars have going on their offensive line, first of all, they have 12 guys on their roster on their offensive line. The oldest among them is 28 years old, so it's a young group. So it's a group they have an opportunity to forge. And I think Wyatt Milum is a guy they're bringing in late in the 3rd round. He's going to have an opportunity to learn a little bit, not necessarily get forced into action right out of the gate, but they're going to like his versatility. Obviously, a guy who played tackle is going to be moved inside to guard, potentially even center, they're talking about in Jacksonville within a season. But when you look at what Jacksonville did, they struggled mightily a year ago, 4-13. One of their big issues was they couldn't get anything in sync offensively, 25th in the league in touchdowns. Trevor Lawrence was a guy who came out of college, came out of Clemson. There was a lot of hype around him. At least to this juncture, he hasn't lived up to that. But the Jaguars still firmly believe Trevor Lawrence can be a franchise quarterback if you surround him with the right supporting cast, and Wyatt Milum might in fact be a critical piece of that supporting cast. So I like the spot that Wyatt has landed in Jacksonville. That staff is going to be very familiar with what they're getting and the type of football player and the type of kid that Wyatt Milum is. From the offensive coordinator up to the head coach, Liam Cohen, they're going to understand and appreciate the value that Wyatt Milum can bring to that football team. Quick housekeeping note to remind you to hit the like button and subscribe, and to do business with the folks who do business with us. That includes J.R. Toothman and our friends at Toothman Ford in Grafton. Get on out to see them because cars cost less in Grafton. Also, we want to thank Fortis and our good friend Rick Lewis. For roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed, be sure to visit fortis.us.com. And a big salute to our friends at Johnston Equipment. You can visit them on Route 33 between Weston and Buchanan or online at johnstoneq.com. So Wyatt went in the 3rd round, and last year, of course, Zach Frazier went to the Steelers in the 2nd round. But just for fun, here's a quick recap of all the Mountaineers through the years who have been selected in the 1st round of the NFL Draft. All right, counting them down. 1st round picks, West Virginia at number 27 in 2000, Anthony Beck to the Jets. Number 15 in 2012, Bruce Irvin to the Seahawks. Number 14, it's happened twice, 2016, Carl Joseph, and 1990, Ronaldo Turnbull. And at number 8, 2013, Tavon Austin to the Rams. Number 7, it's happened 3 times. Kevin White, 2015. Chuck Halley, 1958. Brian Josiak to the Chiefs back in 86. Number 6 has happened 3 times. 1956, Joe Marconi. 1936, Giant Joe Stidehar. And of course, in 2005, Pac-Man to the Titans. And the highest selection ever by a West Virginia football player in 1966, Dick Leftridge went number 3 overall to the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right, that was pretty fun. Stick around. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, there's plenty more to uncover as we let you know which Mountaineers will be chasing their NFL dreams as undrafted free agents. Lightning round on the other side. Stick around for it. You are in the gun.
For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement, with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, with more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
You're listening to Mountaineer Football Talk.
ITG.
Nobody supports the blue and gold Mountaineers like Toothman Ford. With over 20 NIL deals and counting, Toothman Ford continues to rally behind our student athletes. And it's time we rally and support the dealer that supports the Mountaineers. Not only does Toothman Ford offer the best prices in the state on pre-owned, their never over MSRP campaign on new Fords guaranteed to save you thousands. Drive with pride all season long, knowing you're supporting the dealer that fuels our Mountaineers. Toothman Ford, where cars cost less, in Grafton and at toothmanford.com.
There are better-known tractors in the world than Coyote. Ones with bigger names, longer histories, more popular hats, cute toy lines. But there's not a single tractor ever been built that's better equipped to do the dirty work. So we'll just focus on what really matters. Coyote, we dig dirt.
Now at Johnston Equipment, get 0% financing or a free loader with low-rate financing on select Coyote models in stock. Visit us on Route 33 between Weston and Buchanan.
Welcome back. Forget the glitz and glamour of the big stage on night 1 of the NFL Draft, or even what it's like to get your face on ESPN from your own living room, surrounded by your family and friends as the phone rings in a later round. At the end of the day, getting to camp is what matters, no matter how you do it. I mean, think about it. There were 257 players from 86 different schools selected in the 2025 NFL Draft. But as an undrafted free agent, these Mountaineers we're about to discuss created the same opportunity for themselves as each and every one of those players who were drafted. Now the question becomes, what do they do with that opportunity? So let's sort through them one at a time. Where'd they sign and what the situation on that team at their position might look like. Rack them up. Garrett Green signs as a wide receiver with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Of course, the former West Virginia quarterback had moved to receiver this offseason, had been working out there, spent some time in Florida doing so, spent some time in Morgantown doing so. I spoke with Garrett at the spring game, told me he was learning the nuances of the position. His workouts were going well. He steps into a situation as follows in Tampa Bay. Of course, he'll be catching passes from Baker Mayfield, who had a tremendous season for the Bucs last year. The Buccaneers in the draft in the first round went with a wide receiver, Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. Egbuka was actually the third wide receiver drafted overall behind Travis Hunter and Tet McMillan. They went heavy on defense after that first round receiver pick. Then, in the 7th round, they dipped back into the receiver room again to draft Tez Johnson out of Oregon. Now, Tez Johnson is not a big guy, 5'9", $154, but incredibly productive the last couple of years at Oregon. 169 catches, 20 touchdowns after transferring from Troy. They also signed another receiver, Will Shepard out of Colorado, the Buffs' third leading receiver for Dion as an undrafted free agent. So that room is getting a little crowded down there in Tampa. Projected starters would include guys like Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and yes, they're probably going to end up penciling in Egbuka, the rookie out of Ohio State. But that they also have other names in that room: Jalen McMillan, Sterling Shepard, Ryan Miller, Trey Palmer, Rakeem Jarrett. These are some of the guys that Garrett will be competing with to try and make a roster spot in Tampa. They do have a new offensive coordinator in Josh Grizzard. He was just recently promoted, so all positions will be off to a fresh start. Production versus potential is the situation here. Garrett has no production, obviously, at the receiver position to speak of, so it's all going to be based on what potential he shows that he might have at the position. He's going to have to become a technician and do so fast under wide receivers coach Brian McClendon. He's going to have to master route running. He's going to have to get in and out of his cuts. He's going to have to master release moves. Don't get jammed up on the line of scrimmage. The question is, can he make an impact? Can he wiggle his way into some special teams units to make that impact? That brings inherent roster value as well. Remember, there's a former Mountaineer in Keith Tandy who serves as a defensive assistant and a special teams assistant, so at least there's one friendly face in camp down there in Tampa for Garrett Green. Tight end Cole Taylor signs with the Cincinnati Bengals. Will be playing for head coach Zach Taylor, who has his pedigree on the offensive side of the football. Recently promoted offensive coordinator in Dan Pitcher, and he'll be playing for a tight ends coach in Cincinnati who's a former NFL tight end himself in James Casey. Now, the Bengals don't have an official general manager, so the guy that typically plays that role is Duke Tobin. So there's a lot of chefs in the kitchen from a personnel standpoint in Cincinnati when these decisions are made. Now, when you look at their tight ends that are populating the roster, at this juncture, they have 6. Penciled in as the starter, Mike Gesicki, a veteran from Penn State. Then you have Drew Hall, who had 20 catches last year. Eric All Jr. had 20 catches last year. Tanner Hudson, 19 catches. These guys all played extensively. They have Cam Grandy, is a guy that they signed to a 1-year extension this offseason, but also Tanner McLaughlin, the all-time leading receiver for the Arizona Wildcats, a tight end who is in the mix as well. Last year, the Bengals kept 5 tight ends on the roster. A lot of people felt that was because they saw the potential in Tanner McLaughlin out of Arizona after they had drafted him. So this is what Cole Taylor will be immersed in as he's battling for a roster spot with that group of Cincinnati tight ends. Interesting, before West Virginia, of course, Cole Taylor was at LSU, where he actually enrolled early back in January of 2020. Now, that was the same month that Joe Burrow and company beat Clemson to wrap up their perfect season and win the national championship. But Cole Taylor obviously never had a chance to play with Joe Burrow at LSU. Now he'll have the opportunity to do that in camp with the Bengals as he tries to make this team. West Virginia defensive tackle Fattorma Malba signs an undrafted free agent contract with the Jets to play for head coach Aaron Glenn and defensive coordinator Steve Wilks. The Jets did bring in some edge rushers through the draft, but no interior defensive lineman. In fact, Fattorma was the only interior D lineman the Jets signed as an undrafted free agent as well. Now, in this offseason, the Jets brought in 3 defensive tackles, but none are really clear starters. They brought in Byron Cowart from the Bears, Jay Tufele from the Bengals, and Derek Noddy from the Chiefs. All have been kind of rotational players in their career, so obviously what they're trying to do is foster or create some competition in that room, a room that will include the likes of Fidarian Mathis as a defensive tackle, Leonard Taylor. Now, this is a unit that last year allowed 22 rushing touchdowns. That was 29th in the NFL, so this is a need for the Jets to address. Also in that defensive tackle room on the interior of the Jets defensive line is Quinnen Williams. Now, what's interesting here is Malba did have some suitors. He attracted some interest elsewhere from other teams, but his camp liked this fit with the Jets. So obviously they feel pretty good about his opportunity to really have an impact and make this football team. So we're going to see how it goes for Fattorma Malba, who transferred into West Virginia from Penn State. It was always a great story. His family moved from Liberia in 2014 when he was just 12 years old. He never played football or even put on a pad until high school. Now look where he is, one of the most productive defenders against the run among defensive tackles who were graded. When you look at PFF, their numbers had him at 34 tackles, which was the most in the Big 12 among interior defensive linemen. He also managed 15 pressures on the passer last year for West Virginia, and obviously that's not his role, but one more way he might be able to bring value and find a way to make this roster in New York. Mountaineer defensive back Garnet Hollis signs with the Tennessee Titans. Head coach Brian Callahan, he'll be playing for defensive coordinator Denard Wilson and a new corners coach in Tony Oden, who arrives in Tennessee to coach the corners after serving in the same capacity with the New York Jets, where he, of course, coached Sauce Gardner. Despite the length, the frame, and the ability to play the ball that Garnet Hollis had demonstrated at Northwestern, he wasn't able to contribute with the consistency West Virginia had hoped as a Mountaineer. Now, he was playing arguably his best football game, at least the start to it, in the Scooters Frisco Bowl against Memphis, when he was tasked with press coverage for the first quarter and a half against the Tigers' lengthy receiver, 6'3" Rock Taylor. But then Hollis was hurt, left the game with injury, before ending up with an invite to the Reese's Senior Bowl, where he acquitted himself pretty well throughout the week of practice in front of all those NFL coaching guys. But now he heads home to Nashville, where he played at Battleground Academy in high school, to give it a shot with the hometown Titans. When you look at what's going on in the Titans corner room, it's pretty interesting. In March, they released one of their starters, Chidobe Awuzie. They drafted Marcus Harris in the 6th round out of Cal. And in addition to signing Hollis, they had another undrafted free agent signing at that position, cornerback Clarence Lewis out of Syracuse. When you look at the roster, who currently populates that position room, it's a combination of Jarius Sneed, Darrell Baker, Gabe Judy Lally on one side, Jarvis Brownlee, Marcus Harris, and Clarence Lewis on the other. So that's who Garnet Hollis will be battling for a position spot with the Tennessee Titans as he shows up for practice defending passes thrown by the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft, Cam Ward. West Virginia edge rusher Ty French signs with the San Francisco 49ers. Ty French, another guy who spent just one season in Morgantown. He'll be heading west to play for head coach Kyle Shanahan and defensive coordinator Robert Saleh. Of course, John Lynch, highly respected general manager for the San Francisco 49ers. Nobody appreciates defensive value more than John Lynch. Look what the 49ers did in the first round of this year's draft. In the first round, they went with an edge rusher out of Georgia, Michael Williams. They, in fact, drafted 3 defensive linemen in their first 5 picks. Those D linemen presented various skill sets and a wide range of body types, but they all have one thing in common. They can all get after the passer as the 49ers continue to search for a bookend counterpart to edge rusher Nick Bosa. Now, when you look at Ty French will be viewed at the next level. He's 6'1", 225 pounds, as a pass rush specialist. And at West Virginia this past season, it didn't materialize the way anybody would have hoped. He had no sacks. He only had 2.5 tackles for loss. This was after an incredibly disruptive and record-setting career as a pass rusher at Gardner-Webb, where he set a school record with 34.5 sacks. If you're going to try and make an NFL roster as a pass rush specialist, you better be very good at that one skill. And when you look at Ty French, he has that explosive first step, but is it explosive enough? He does run well, but does he run well enough? And it will obviously serve him well if he can get into camp and find a way as well, we talk about this all the time, to contribute on the transition units. What kind of impact can Ty French have as a special teams player? You kind of get the sense that he's going to have to do that to buy himself enough opportunities to make this football team in San Francisco. West Virginia offensive lineman Nick Malone has signed with the Miami Dolphins to play for head coach Mike McDaniel, offensive coordinator Frank Smith Nick will be in a group coached by offensive line coach Butch Berry. What a great story. Nick Malone, so self-made, former walk-on, West Virginia kid, Morgantown kid. Now he gets a chance with the Miami Dolphins in camp in South Florida to see what can happen. The first thing that's going to stand out about Nick Malone in camp with the Dolphins is versatility. He can play multiple positions. Now, again, let's study what the Dolphins have done on that offensive line. In the draft with an early pick, they took a guard out of Arizona who also played offensive tackle for the Wildcats. So once again, they're looking at versatile football players. From an undrafted free agent standpoint, Nick wasn't the only undrafted offensive lineman that the Dolphins signed. They also signed a guard, Addison Weston, out of Western Michigan. Looks like he might be projected to play center for the Dolphins. And they also signed Josh Preeb out of Michigan, who also played guard. So the Dolphins stocking up 3 additions through the draft and after the draft to that offensive line room. An offensive line room that includes names like Austin Jackson, James Daniels, Aaron Brewer, Liam Eichenberg, Jackson Carman. There's going to be some battles for some starting spots, but also some battles in that Dolphins camp for some other spots in this depth chart. 13 offensive linemen figure to be in camp with the Dolphins. So Nick Malone's going to have to bring it, but he's been counted out his whole life. And once again, I look at his versatility, his ability to do different things at different spots and present different skill sets to really serve him well and give him a puncher's chance in Miami to make this football team. So best of luck to Nick Malone. One heck of a kid, one heck of a story. And last but not least, West Virginia long snapper supreme Austin Brinkman signs with the Houston Texans. Austin was steady Eddie in 50 games at West Virginia as the Mountaineer long snapper. The truth is, long snapper might be the only position in sports that if you get your name mentioned during a game broadcast, you might be out of work the next day. Now, the situation on the Texans roster, longtime long snapper John Weeks, he's been Houston's long snapper for the last 15 years. Well, he left in free agency for San Francisco. So that left the job open. Now, earlier this offseason in February, the Texans signed long snapper Tucker Addington to a futures deal. Addington has appeared in 10 NFL games for the Dolphins and the Patriots, and it looks like Austin Brinkman will be competing in camp with Tucker Addington for the job in Houston. So, best of luck to Austin Brinkman. Great kid, great football player. Here's hoping he becomes the second West Virginia long snapper to play in the NFL right now. Rex Sunahara, of course, on the roster with the Cleveland Browns. So let's wrap this thing up. As we said earlier, what we were hoping to do was simply get you up to speed and let you know which Mountaineers coming out of NFL Draft Weekend landed in which camps and have an opportunity to make which roster. But you're going to want to keep tabs and continue to pay attention to see if further players are added to the list. So that's going to do it for this one. For Wesley Uhler, the Runaway Beer Truck, Owen Schmitt, and our producer, Schuyler Callihan, I am Jed Drenning. And remember, the one thing we ask of you is to be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast. You've been In the Gun.
The fun doesn't have to stop here.
Be sure to hit subscribe and never miss an episode.
Join us again next time.
Until then,
Tell an ear to tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast.
This mission is over. It's over.